"Will you stay if I undress?" she asked.
The woman on the riverbank was soaking wet, trembling, her designer clothes clinging to her body like a second skin. She looked at the stranger who had just risked his life to pull her from the dark water. But to understand how two strangers ended up on that riverbank, one asking an impossible question, the other unable to answer, we need to go back to the beginning. The bedside lamp cast a warm glow across Linda's face as Harry closed the storybook. His daughter's eyes were already heavy with sleep, but she fought against it the way she always did.
"Daddy, why don't you ever go out with anyone?"
Harry smoothed the blanket over her small shoulders.
"I have you. That's more than enough."
Linda studied him with the unsettling wisdom that 7-year-olds sometimes possess.
"Mommy wouldn't want you to be alone forever."
The words landed somewhere deep in his chest. Harry leaned down and kissed her forehead.
"Get some sleep, baby girl. I'll see you in the morning."
He waited until her breathing slowed into the rhythm of dreams before slipping out of the room. The apartment was small 2 bedrooms in a building where the elevator worked only half the time, and the hallway always smelled faintly of someone else's dinner. But it was theirs. It was safe. Harry sank onto the couch and stared at the wedding photo on the shelf. Maya smiled back at him, frozen in a moment, 3 years gone. The accident had taken her on a Tuesday afternoon, an ordinary day that became the dividing line of his life, before and after, with her and without. He had learned to breathe again. He had learned to make Linda's lunches and braid her hair and show up for parent-teacher conferences. But somewhere along the way, he had also learned to build walls so high that nothing could hurt him again. Nothing could get in. Nothing could get out. The clock showed 9:15. He had a night shift driving for a rideshare app, extra money that kept Linda in a decent school and food on the table. Harry grabbed his jacket and checked on his daughter one more time before leaving. Survival. That was what his life had become. Not living, just surviving. 40 floors above the city. Serena Thornton stood at the window of her corner office and watched the lights below. The board meeting had ended an hour ago, but the tension still coiled in her shoulders like a living thing. The largest investor had threatened to pull out unless she changed the company's direction. She had handled it the way she always did, with cold logic and calculated precision. No emotion, no weakness, just the armor she had spent 17 years building. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. "Congratulations on the 10-year anniversary of the company." Serena stared at the screen. 10 years since she had built this empire from nothing. 10 years of 18-hour days, strategic acquisitions, and never letting anyone see her sweat. No one knew that today was also the anniversary of the fire. The night she lost both parents. The night she became 19 years old and completely alone in the world. She had clawed her way up from that grief-transforming pain into ambition and loss into control. If she could control everything, her company, her image, her emotions, then nothing could ever hurt her again. But standing here now, surrounded by the evidence of her success, Serena felt nothing. The corner office, the designer clothes, the 7-figure salary, all of it felt like glass walls separating her from the world. She could see life happening around her, but she couldn't touch it, couldn't feel it. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her things. Not from fear of failure, she had faced that before, but from something worse. The growing suspicion that she had succeeded at building a life that wasn't worth living. The pedestrian bridge stretched across the river, its lights reflecting off the dark water below. Harry often drove this route after his shifts, drawn to the place where he and Maya used to walk on summer evenings. Tonight, the memories felt closer than usual. He was about to continue past when he noticed her. A woman standing alone at the railing, perfectly still, staring down at the water. Something about her posture made him slow the car, made him pull over. Harry approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. The closer he got, the more he noticed the expensive coat, the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she gripped the railing like it was the only thing keeping her upright.
Are you okay?
The woman turned. Even in the dim light, he could see she was beautiful, in a sharp, polished way. But her eyes were what caught him. They held the same emptiness he saw in his own mirror.
I don't know,
she said. The honesty of it surprised him. In his experience, people like her, people who wore clothes that cost more than his monthly rent, always had a ready answer. A polished deflection.
I'm sorry,
she continued, shaking her head slightly.
I don't know why I said that. I'm fine.
But she didn't move, and neither did he.
You don't look fine,
Harry said carefully.
You look like someone standing on the edge of something.
The woman's laugh was brittle.
That obvious.
I recognized the look. She turned to face him fully, then studying him with an intensity that felt almost physical.
You do.
Harry leaned against the railing, keeping a respectful distance between them.
I lost my wife 3 years ago.
For a long time after I stood on edges like this. Not because I wanted to jump, just because I wanted to feel something other than numb. The woman's expression shifted, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the exhaustion beneath.
I'm so tired,
she admitted. I've spent so long building something, being someone, that I forgot what it felt like to just exist. Now I have everything I thought I wanted and I feel nothing. You get so focused on not drowning that you forget what it's like to actually swim, Harry said quietly.
Yes.
The word came out like a release of breath. That's exactly it. They stood in silence for a moment, two strangers connected by a shared understanding that needed no explanation. The city hummed around them, indifferent to the small human moment unfolding on the bridge.
I should go,
the woman finally said.
I'm sorry for unloading on you. You didn't ask for that.
You didn't unload, you were honest. Harry straightened. That's rare. She smiled, and it transformed her face into something softer.
Thank you for stopping.
Thank you for answering. She turned to walk away, and that's when it happened. Her heel caught on an uneven section of pavement. She stumbled sideways, her body twisting toward the railing. Harry saw it in slow motion, her hand reaching out, finding nothing, her center of gravity shifting past the point of recovery. The railing was low, meant more for guidance than protection. She went over. The splash hit his ears like a gunshot. Harry didn't think. He couldn't think because if he thought he would remember Linda sleeping peacefully in her bed, trusting that her father would come home. He would remember that she had already lost one parent to a senseless accident. But his body was already moving, already shedding his jacket, already climbing the railing. The water hit him like a wall of ice. It flooded his nose and mouth, disorienting him completely. Darkness everywhere. He kicked toward where he thought she had fallen, his lungs already burning. His hand found fabric. He pulled. She was limp, not fighting him, either unconscious or too cold to move. Harry kicked upward with everything he had, dragging her toward the surface. They broke through together, both gasping. The current was stronger than he expected, pulling them toward the bridge supports. Harry wrapped one arm around her chest and swam with the other, fighting for the bank with muscles that screamed in protest. When his feet finally touched bottom, he nearly collapsed. He dragged her onto the grass and fell beside her, both of them coughing, shaking, alive. For a long moment they just lay there, staring up at the night sky. Harry could feel his heart pounding so hard it seemed to shake his whole body. He had almost died. He had almost left Linda an orphan. The woman turned her head to look at him. Water dripped from her hair and her mascara ran in dark streaks down her cheeks. But her eyes were present in a way they hadn't been before. Alive.
Why did you do that?
She asked, her voice raw.
You don't know me.
Harry pushed himself to sitting still, breathing hard. That's the only reason I could. She sat up slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. The expensive coat was ruined, clinging to her like a second skin. She looked smaller now, stripped of the armor of perfect presentation.
I don't even know your name, she said. Harry. Serena.
They sat in silence, the river rushing past them, the city lights reflecting off its surface. Harry knew he should leave. He needed to get home, get warm, get back to the life that was waiting for him. But he couldn't move. Not yet. Serena turned to him again, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper.
Will you stay if I undress?
Harry frowned. What? If I strip away everything, the title, the control, the mask I wear to make everyone think I'm strong, would you stay, or would you run like everyone else? The question wasn't seductive. It was desperate. The plea of someone who had been alone so long she had forgotten how to ask for company. Harry felt something crack in his chest, the same wall he had built so carefully since Maya died. He wanted to say yes. He wanted to tell her that he understood that he carried his own masks, his own armor. But Linda's face flashed through his mind. The small apartment. The life he had built to protect them both.
I have to get home to my daughter,
he said. Serena nodded, her expression closing off again. Of course. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. Harry stood, water still dripping from his clothes. He extended his hand to help her up. She took it, her fingers cold in his grip. It wasn't inappropriate, he said. It was honest. But I'm not the person you should ask. He let go of her hand and walked away, his wet shoes squelching against the pavement. He didn't look back. He couldn't. But even as he drove home shivering in his soaked clothes, he knew something had shifted. A door he had sealed shut 3 years ago had cracked open, and the light coming through was as terrifying as it was warm. He didn't know her. He didn't need to know her. He had a daughter to raise and a life to protect. But he could still feel the weight of her question in his chest pressing against the walls he had built. Would you stay? For the first time in 3 years, Harry wasn't sure he knew the answer. Serena woke in a private hospital room with white walls and the smell of antiseptic. Her assistant Rachel stood by the window phone, pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed tones. A lawyer sat in the corner reviewing documents. A PR specialist typed furiously on a laptop. The machine of her life had mobilized while she slept. She's awake, Rachel announced, ending her call. The room shifted into motion around Serena like she was the center of a storm she hadn't asked for. The incident has been contained, the PR specialist said without looking up. No media coverage. The hospital staff signed NDAs. Officially, you were never here. Serena pulled herself upright against the pillows. Her throat was raw, her body aching, but her mind was already racing through the implications. A CEO, nearly drowning, would raise questions. Questions about stability, about leadership, about weakness. The man who pulled me out, she said. Who was he? Rachel consulted her tablet. Harry Marshall, 34 years old. Single father, 1 daughter. Works building maintenance during the day, drives rideshare at night. Lives in the Riverside district. A world away from hers. A completely different life. I want to thank him properly, Serena said. The lawyer looked up. We can arrange a settlement, generous compensation for his discretion. No. The word came out sharper than Serena intended. I want to thank him myself. Harry got home at 3 in the morning, his clothes still damp. He checked on Linda, watching her sleep for longer than usual, then sat on the kitchen floor with his back against the cabinet. He had almost died tonight. The cold of the river still lived in his bones, and every time he closed his eyes, he felt the current pulling him down. But worse than the memory of drowning was the memory of her eyes. The way she had asked that question. The raw honesty of someone who had nothing left to lose. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in the darkness and tried to rebuild the walls that had crumbled the moment he jumped into that river. The next afternoon, a black car pulled up outside his building. Harry watched from the window as a woman in a tailored suit emerged and approached the entrance. Minutes later, a knock at his door. He opened it to find a polished assistant holding an envelope. "Mr. Marshall, Miss Thornton asked me to deliver this personally." Harry took the envelope. Inside was a check with more zeros than he had ever seen attached to his name. "I can't accept this," he said, handing it back. The assistant blinked clearly, unprepared for refusal. Ms. Thornton insisted. "Tell Ms. Thornton I didn't pull her out of the river for money." He closed the door. 3 days later, Serena stood outside Harry's apartment building, feeling more out of place than she had ever felt in her life. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and old carpet. The elevator was broken. She had climbed 4 flights of stairs in heels that cost more than most people's rent. She knocked before she could talk herself out of it. Harry opened the door, surprise flickering across his face before settling into something guarded. "Miss Thornton?" "Serena," she corrected. "You saved my life. I think we're past formalities." He didn't invite her in. "You're okay, that's good. But you didn't need to come here. You refused my check. I told your assistant I didn't do it for money." Serena studied him, this man who had risked everything for a stranger and wanted nothing in return. In her world, everyone wanted something. Every kindness came with a price tag. "Then why did you do it?" she asked. Harry leaned against the door frame. "I don't know. I saw someone falling and I jumped. There wasn't time to think about why. Most people would have called for help, waited for professionals. Most people didn't spend 3 years learning what it feels like to wish someone had jumped in to save the person they loved." The words landed between them like stones dropped into still water. Serena remembered what he had told her on the bridge about his wife, about loss. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "About your wife." Harry nodded once, accepting the condolence without elaborating. "You should go back to your life, Serena. We don't belong in the same world." "What if I don't want to go back?" The question surprised them both. Serena hadn't planned to say it, but standing here in this shabby hallway that smelled like real life instead of the sterile perfection of her office, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Present, human, seen. Harry shook his head slowly. "You don't know what you're asking." "Maybe not, but I'd like to find out." Before he could respond, a small voice came from inside the apartment. "Daddy, who's at the door?" Linda appeared beside her father, looking up at Serena with curious eyes. She wore mismatched socks and a shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it. "Hi," Linda said. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Serena crouched down to the girl's level, her expensive coat brushing the worn carpet. "I'd like to be, if that's okay with you." Linda considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I don't know much about them," Serena admitted, "but I'm willing to learn." Linda smiled, revealing a gap where her front tooth used to be. "Okay, you can be Daddy's friend." Harry watched the exchange with an expression Serena couldn't read. Something between fear and wonder, like a man watching a door open that he had nailed shut long ago. 1 week later, Serena found herself in a park near Harry's apartment. She told herself it was coincidence. She told herself she was just taking a walk, clearing her head. But when she spotted Harry pushing Linda on the swings, she walked toward them without hesitation. "Serena," Linda waved enthusiastically. "Come swing with us." Harry's expression was harder to read, but he didn't tell her to leave. That felt like progress. Serena sat on the swing next to Linda, feeling ridiculous in her designer clothes among the wood chips and rust-spotted equipment. She couldn't remember the last time she had been on a swing. Couldn't remember the last time she had done anything without a strategic purpose. "You have to pump your legs," Linda instructed. "Like this." Serena tried to copy the motion, feeling awkward and uncoordinated. Linda giggled at her attempts, and the sound was so genuine, so free of judgment, that Serena found herself laughing too. Harry watched from nearby, and something in his face softened. Later, while Linda played on the climbing structure, Serena and Harry sat on a bench in uncomfortable silence.
"She's wonderful," Serena finally said. "She's everything." "I can tell."
Serena watched Linda navigate the monkey bars with fearless determination. "She asked me if I was sad, said I looked like you when you think no one's watching." Harry turned to her sharply. "When did she say that?" "Just now, while you were getting her water." Serena met his eyes. "She sees more than you think." "She always has. Her mother was the same way." The mention of his wife hung in the air between them, not as a barrier but as a bridge, a shared understanding of loss. "I lost my parents when I was 19, Serena said quietly. "A fire. I was at college when it happened. Came home to nothing but ashes and insurance paperwork." She had never told anyone that story so simply without the protective layer of corporate biography. Harry didn't offer empty condolences. He just listened. "I built my company because I needed something to control," she continued. "If I could control everything around me, nothing could hurt me again. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to feel anything at all." Harry was quiet for a long moment. "I did the opposite. I stopped trying to control anything. Just focused on getting through each day without falling apart. Thought that was the same as being okay." "Is it?" "No. It's just a different kind of numb." Linda came running over, breathless and happy, and the moment passed. But something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement that they were both broken in complementary ways. 2 weeks became 3. 3 became 4. Serena found excuses to be near Harry's neighborhood, a coffee shop. She suddenly preferred a park that was supposedly better for thinking. Harry stopped pretending he wasn't looking for her car. They had dinner at a small restaurant Harry chose, not expensive, not impressive, but warm and real. The kind of place where the waitress knew everyone's name and the food tasted like someone's grandmother had made it. Serena struggled to navigate the menu, the casual conversation with staff, the complete lack of pretense. But she tried, and Harry noticed. Linda made everything easier. She talked about school and friends and the caterpillar she was raising in a jar. She asked Serena questions about her job, then promptly declared that being a CEO sounded boring, and she would rather be a paleontologist. On the drive home, Linda fell asleep in the back seat, and the car filled with a different kind of silence. Comfortable. Intimate. "Can I tell you something?" Serena asked. Harry glanced at her. "Go ahead." "This is the first time in years I've felt like a person instead of a position." He didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was rough. "I know what you mean. I forgot there was a difference." They pulled up outside Serena's building, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that seemed to belong to a different universe than the restaurant they had just left. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "Thank you for trying." She wanted to kiss him. She could feel the pull of it, the gravity drawing them together. But Linda was sleeping in the back seat, and the distance between their worlds felt suddenly insurmountable. "Good night, Harry." "Good night, Serena." She stepped out of the car and walked toward the lobby, feeling his eyes on her back. At the door, she turned. He was still watching. Neither of them waved. Neither of them needed to. The tabloid photos appeared 2 weeks later. Harry's face, Linda's face, splashed across websites with headlines designed to wound. CEO's slumming secret. Single father or social climber? What is she really looking for in the projects? Harry saw them first. A coworker showed him during lunch break, phone screen thrust forward with cruel curiosity. That night, Linda came home from school crying. Other kids had seen the pictures. Other kids had parents who talked too loudly at the dinner table. "Daddy, why are people saying mean things about you?" Harry held his daughter and felt the protective walls slam back into place, higher and stronger than before. This was exactly what he had feared. His world couldn't withstand her spotlight. The board meeting happened 2 days later. Serena sat at the head of the table while her investors laid out their concerns with surgical precision. Stock fluctuations, reputation management, the inappropriate optics of the company's leader associating with someone so far beneath her station. This relationship, one board member said as if the word tasted bitter, is becoming a liability. The largest investor leaned forward. "We're calling for a vote of no confidence. You have 48 hours to make a choice. End this publicly or step down." Serena looked around the table at the faces of people she had made wealthy beyond imagination. Not one of them saw her as a person. She was a brand, an asset, a number on a spreadsheet. "I'll have your answer in 48 hours, she said. Harry was waiting for her in the parking garage. He had never been to her office building before, had never wanted to see the physical evidence of the chasm between their lives, but tonight he needed to see her face when he said what he had come to say. Serena walked toward her car and stopped when she saw him. Even in the harsh fluorescent lighting, she looked exhausted, diminished somehow, like the weight of her empire was finally crushing her. "Harry." His name came out like a release of breath. "How did you get in here?" "Security isn't as tight as you think when you look like you belong in the service entrance." She didn't laugh. Neither did he. "I saw the pictures," he said. "I saw what they wrote about Linda." Serena's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "I know you didn't." Harry stepped closer. "But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change what will keep happening if we stay in each other's lives." "So you're ending this?" Her voice was flat, accepting. "I'm protecting my daughter." The words burned coming out. "She's already lost her mother. She can't lose her childhood too. Not for something that was never going to work." Serena nodded slowly. "You're right. This was always impossible." They stood in the concrete silence of the parking garage, the space between them filled with everything they couldn't say. "You deserve to be happy," Harry said. "Find someone from your world, someone who won't make your life harder." "You deserve to be happy too." Serena's voice cracked on the last word. "Don't spend the rest of your life just getting by. That's not what your wife would have wanted." The mention of Maya hit him like a physical blow. Serena saw it and reached out her fingers, brushing his arm. "Goodbye, Harry." She walked to her car. He watched her drive away, the taillights disappearing up the ramp and into the night. When he got home, Linda was still awake, waiting for him in her pajamas. "Daddy, are you sad?" Harry knelt down and hugged her tight. "A little bit, baby girl. But I'll be okay." "Is it because of Miss Serena?" He pulled back to look at her face. "How did you know?" Linda shrugged with the simple wisdom of children. "You smile different when she's around. Like you used to smile when Mommy was here." The words broke something in Harry's chest. He had spent 3 years teaching Linda about safety, about caution, about protecting what you have. But what had he taught her about courage, about taking risks for things that matter? "Baby girl," he said slowly, "you remember what you said about learning to be happy again?" Linda nodded. "I think I forgot to do that. I got so scared of losing people that I stopped letting anyone in." His daughter studied him with Maya's eyes. "That sounds lonely." "It is." "Then maybe you should stop being so scared." Harry looked at his 7-year-old daughter, who had somehow become the wisest person he knew, and felt the walls around his heart begin to crack once more. But tonight he didn't have the strength to tear them down. Tonight all he could do was hold his daughter close and wonder if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The boardroom fell silent when Serena made her announcement. She stood at the head of the table where she had sat for 10 years, looking at the faces of people who had never seen her as anything more than a means to profit. "I'm taking an indefinite leave of absence," she said. effective immediately. The largest investor leaned forward. You're choosing him over everything you've built. Serena shook her head. I'm choosing myself. For the first time in 17 years, I'm choosing to find out who I am without this company defining me. She walked out before anyone could respond. Her heels echoed against the marble floor each step, carrying her further from the identity she had constructed like armor around her wounds. That night, Serena sat alone in her penthouse and felt the vastness of her life pressing in from all sides. The corner office was gone. The board meetings were gone. The endless emails and strategic decisions and carefully managed appearances all gone. She was terrified. But beneath the terror was something else. A flicker of something she hadn't felt since before the fire took her parents. Relief. The exhausting performance of strength was finally over. The next morning, she called a therapist. Not the executive coach she had seen for years trained to optimize her productivity and manage her stress. A real therapist. Someone who would ask her questions she had spent her whole adult life avoiding. The first session broke her open. She talked about the fire for the first time in years, not as a corporate origin story, but as the worst night of her life. She talked about the guilt of surviving when her parents didn't, about building an empire to prove she deserved to exist, about the hollow victory of succeeding at a life she never actually wanted. I don't know who I am, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. Without the title, without the control, I don't know what's left. The therapist leaned forward gently. Then maybe it's time to find out. Serena rented a small apartment in a neighborhood she would never have considered before. No doorman, no concierge, just a simple one-bedroom with a kitchen she didn't know how to use and neighbors who didn't care about stock prices. She learned to grocery shop. She burned dinner more times than she could count, setting off the smoke detector so often that her neighbor knocked on the door to make sure she wasn't actually on fire. She laughed at herself, something she couldn't remember doing in years. The days stretched long without meetings to fill them. Serena walked through the city like a tourist in her own life, noticing things she had never seen from the back of a chauffeured car. Street musicians, children playing in parks, old couples holding hands on benches. She didn't contact Harry. Not because she had stopped thinking about him, she thought about him constantly, but because she needed to answer a question first. The same question she had asked him on the riverbank. If she stripped away everything, the power, the money, the carefully constructed facade was there, anything left worth staying for? 3 months of therapy, 3 months of learning to cook and clean and exist without assistance managing her life. And Serena finally had her answer. Yes. There was something left. Something small and scared and imperfect, but real. Harry drove past the bridge every night after his shifts. He told himself it was the fastest route home. He knew it was a lie. The weeks after he walked away from Serena felt like moving through water. Everything was harder. Everything took more effort. The walls he had rebuilt around his heart were strong, but they were also suffocating. Linda noticed the change. She stopped asking about Miss Serena after the first week, but she watched her father with eyes that saw too much. One evening, she brought home a drawing from school. The assignment had been to draw her family. Harry looked at the picture. 3 figures stood together, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman with long hair. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing to the woman. Linda shrugged, suddenly shy. "Just someone?" But they both knew who it was. The woman who had made her father smile like he used to when Mommy was alive. That night after Linda went to bed, Harry sat alone in the kitchen and confronted the truth he had been avoiding. He had walked away to protect his daughter, but had he really protected her? Or had he just taught her that love was something to run from? The next Sunday he drove to the cemetery where Maya was buried. He hadn't been there in months. The grief had faded into something manageable, but the guilt remained. Guilt for moving forward. Guilt for feeling things for someone new. He sat on the grass beside her headstone and talked to her the way he used to in the early days when the wound was still fresh. "I met someone," he said. "I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But she saw me. Really saw me. And I ran away." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass. "I'm scared that loving her means forgetting you. I'm scared that letting her in means losing her too." But Linda said something. She said I tell her we can learn to be happy again, but I never do it myself. I just hide. He pressed his palm against the cool marble. "You would have liked her, Maya. She's broken like me. But she's trying. She's actually trying to be better." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was permission. "I think you'd want me to try too." 3 months after their last conversation, Harry found Serena's new address. It wasn't hard, he still had connections to people who knew people. The building was modest, unremarkable, nothing like the glass tower where she used to live. He stood outside for 20 minutes before he worked up the courage to knock. The woman who opened the door looked different. No makeup. Hair pulled back simply. Wearing jeans and a sweater instead of designer labels. But her eyes were the same, except now they held something new. Peace. Or the beginning of it. "Harry." His name came out like a breath she had been holding. "You're hard to find these days." Serena leaned against the doorframe. "That was kind of the point." Her lips curved into a small smile. "How did you find me? I never really lost you. I just didn't know if I was allowed to look." She stepped back, inviting him in. The apartment was small and simply furnished with evidence of her new life scattered everywhere. Cookbooks on the counter, most of them well worn with use. A yoga mat rolled up in the corner. Art supplies on the coffee table that looked like they had actually been used. A scorch mark on the kitchen ceiling caught his attention. Serena followed his gaze and laughed. "I've gotten better. That was from month 1. Harry looked around the space that held no trace of the CEO he had met. "This isn't what I expected." "Neither am I." She sat on the couch and pulled her knees up beneath her. "I don't know who I am anymore. I spent 3 months trying to figure it out. Therapy. Learning to do things for myself. Sitting with the silence instead of filling it with work. And I'm still figuring it out. But I'm okay with that now." She looked at him with an openness that made his chest ache. "I'm not the woman you pulled out of the river. I'm not the CEO who tried to buy your forgiveness with a check. I'm just someone trying to learn how to be human again." Harry sat down across from her. The distance between them felt charged with everything unsaid. "You asked me once if I would stay," he said. "If you stripped away everything. I didn't understand the question then." Serena's breath caught. "And now I understand that you weren't asking me to save you. You were asking if there was anything left worth staying for when all the armor came off." He leaned forward. "I couldn't answer because I was wearing armor too. Still am." "So what changed?" Linda drew a picture of our family. "You were in it." Serena's eyes glistened. "She barely knows me." "She knows you made me smile." That was enough for her. Harry's voice grew rough. "I've spent 3 years teaching her to be safe, to protect herself. But I never taught her to be brave. I never showed her that some things are worth the risk." He stood and moved to sit beside her on the couch, close enough to touch, but not touching. Not yet. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "I'm here because I need to learn the same things you're learning. How to be real. How to be seen. How to let someone in without the guarantee that it won't hurt." Serena reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his. "I can't promise I won't mess up," she said. "I'm still figuring out who I am without the mask. I can't promise I won't get scared and want to run again." They looked at each other, two broken people with complementary cracks. So we learn together, Serena said. We undress together, not all at once, just a little bit at a time. Harry squeezed her hand. I can do that. 6 months later, on a Sunday morning that looked like any other, Serena stood in her small kitchen and watched Harry flip pancakes while Linda set the table. The pancakes were slightly burned on one side, they always were, but no one complained. Linda had taken over one corner of the living room with her toys. Serena's coffee table now held crayons and dinosaur figurines alongside her books. The apartment that had once felt empty now felt full in ways she hadn't known she needed. Her phone buzzed. A message from the board they wanted her back. They were willing to negotiate terms. Serena looked at the screen, then at Harry and Linda arguing about whether dinosaurs could actually roar or if movies made that up. I'll call them later, she told Harry when he raised an eyebrow. Do you want to go back?